Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. It is about to get real for Coach Prime, the Colorado Buffaloes, with this transfer portal window set to open up. We fully expect Colorado to be one of the biggest players in the transfer portal, like they have been the last couple of years now. To me, here's what's different. When Coach Prime first took over this program, there was holes all over this roster. I mean, pretty much every single position had to be revamped in the transfer portal. And then in the second transfer portal window, after year one, there were still plenty of holes that needed to be addressed. Going into 2025, there are still holes that Colorado needs to address, but this is a much more complete roster than what we've seen the previous couple of years. And so I think that's going to allow Colorado to be a little bit more picky and a little bit more intentful in terms of what kind of players do we want to bring in. You know, you lose a lot of really good football players, right? Travis Hunter, Shador Sanders. There's a long list of guys that are going to the NFL after this year that is going to be hard to replace. But there's also a lot of young talent on this team that you kind of feel good about going into 2025. And so you're going to see Colorado be aggressive, but I think it might be a little bit more of that, big game hunting aggression as opposed to let's go bring in 30 plus players. That's kind of how I see it playing out. Want to get into some players and position groups we would like to see Colorado go out and get. Now, before we get into it, as always, most importantly, happy Thanksgiving. I'm thankful for y'all. You guys give me an opportunity to talk football with you guys. The amount of support the Colorado fans have shown, even going back to last offseason when we broke down pretty much every single commitment Colorado landed in the transfer portal. The amount of support means the world. Appreciate you guys. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Hope y'all enjoy your Thanksgiving. And without further ado, let's get into this one. And let's start with that wide receiver position. That's probably the biggest position group Colorado wants to replenish, right? You have guys like Marion Miller, hopefully coming back from injury, looking like himself. Draylon Miller is emerging as a dude in the college football landscape, but you're losing legitimately 4 NFL wide receivers, right? Will Shepard, Travis Hunter, LeJounte West, or Jimmy Hornet. There's some production that needs to be replaced. But I think just as importantly, I think the expectation is true freshman Julian Lewis is going to be running this Colorado offense in 2025. When you start a true freshman at the Power 4 level, you want to make sure the pieces are in place around him for him to have as much success year one as possible. And so I think that pass catcher position is going to be probably the most important position for Colorado to address. One, because you have a true freshman quarterback that's expected to start in 2025. Number two, you got to replace a lot of good football players. First player on the list, Johntay Cook, former 5-star, committed to Texas in the transfer portal. Johntay Cook is a great football player. And I'm not necessarily sure what went wrong with him year two in Texas, where you saw the flashes as a freshman, thought he'd be kind of one of those centerpieces in the offense in his second year in Texas in 2024. And, for whatever reason, Texas goes to the transfer portal, brings in 4 different wide receivers. Johntay Cook just not getting the opportunity that we all thought he would have for Texas in 2024. This kid can play, and I think more importantly, he fits what Colorado wants to do. We talk about this all the time. But one of the most important aspects of this Colorado offense are, having playmakers with the football in their hands. You look at guys like Jimmy Horn and LeJounte West and Travis Hunter, it doesn't need to be vertical shots to hit explosive plays. If you have those guys that can make people miss and hit the home run with the football in their hands, very, very important asset in this Colorado offense. Johntay Cook's that dude. I mean, the straight line speed is there, but what intrigues me more about Johntay Cook is the overall movement patterns, the quick twitch. Kind of think of guys like Travis Hunter and LeJounte Wester. That's what makes this kid special. He can separate in his route trees very early. He's very good after the catch. This kid, I don't think he's some sort of 5-star washout. You know what I mean? I think he played well as a freshman, thought he was going to be a big-time contributor in 2024 and just didn't get the opportunity. And so wherever this kid goes in 2025, given the opportunity, I think he can be a legit ball player wherever he goes. Well, guess what? Colorado's got some spots open in that wide receiver room. Johntay Cook, first one on the list. Number 2, and this is kind of to replace that Will Shepard kind of wide receiver. And I thought Will Shepard was a brilliant move by Coach Prime in terms of the kind of wide receiver he added to this offense, that bigger body that can work vertically down the field. That's kind of you felt like they were missing that. Coach Prime's first year at Colorado. Will Sheppard gave them that in 2024. Let's start with a familiar name. Former four-star prospect Malachi Coleman was committed to Nebraska. Colorado, or Coach Prime takes a job at Colorado. It was very close to having Malachi Coleman being a Colorado Buffalo. He ends up sticking with Nebraska. 2 years have gone by. He redshirted this year. You saw some things year one from Malachi Coleman. At the end of the day, he hasn't been extremely productive at the collegiate level yet. This kid is about as physically gifted as it gets. I mean, 6'5", 210, a 10.49 in the 100-meter dash. When you have someone who's 6'5", 210 pounds, that is the fastest football player on the field, there are some elite physical traits that Malachi Coleman is working with. Now, he was always going to be kind of a project kind of guy. We knew Malachi Coleman coming out of high school wasn't going to be someone that figured it out immediately at the collegiate level. He was an edge rusher at the high school level, played a bunch of different positions, basically was just kind of a freaky athlete that the position outlook was kind of murky with. He settled into this wide receiver role. I think he blocks out on the perimeter exceptionally well, which is another important aspect when you're talking Colorado offense. But he has that game-breaking speed. He's one of those players that, at 6'5", 210 with a 10.49 100-meter dash, there are just not a lot of defensive backs that are big and strong enough to deal with him, but also can run with him down the field. And if you're an opposing defense, you have to respect what Malachi Coleman is doing working vertically down the field. Malachi Coleman, a guy that almost ended up at Colorado out of high school. I would not be surprised to see Colorado kick the tires on Malachi Coleman again. And at the end of the day, just bet on this kid. We talk about this all the time. Football, it's at the root of it. It's a height, weight, speed sport. You get big and fast football players are probably going to be a good football team. Malachi Coleman is the definition of big and fast. Go bet on this kid. Now, here's a name that's not in the transfer portal yet, but I think very well could be Eric Rivers. At FIU, LeJohntay Wester came from FAU last year. Eric Rivers, you take a look at his numbers, 55 catches, over 1,000 yards. He's averaging 19.1 yards per catch, 19 missed tackles forced on the year, 393 yards after the catch. This is one of those examples of a guy that is crushing it at the G5 level and is looking for a Power 5 opportunity or Power 4 opportunity. Colorado's had a ton of success with these kind of guys, especially in the state of Florida, right? LeJohntay Wester, Jimmy Horn, Xavier Weaver, all coming from G5 schools in the state of Florida. Eric Rivers could be next in line. Now, again, not in the transfer portal yet, but this is one of those wide receivers that Coach Prime loves to get. He loves to go. One of the things I respect the most about Coach Prime is he recognizes that there's a lot of good football all over the country. And there's a lot of guys who have slipped through the cracks and didn't necessarily make it at first at the Power 4 level or didn't even get a Power 4 opportunity out of high school. And he's willing to go bet on those guys. Eric Rivers is one of them. He's got a year of eligibility remaining. I think he's looking for a spot to take that jump in the explosive nature. I mean, 19.1 yards per catch, that's something I love. He's elite after the catch, can work vertically down the field, track and field background. This one would make a lot of sense too. Now, the second position group, and I want to quickly talk about the offensive line. I'll say this. I don't think the offensive line is that huge of a concern. Now, you can never have enough good offensive linemen. And so I wouldn't be surprised for Coach Prime to continue to bolster up that offensive line. But I look at guys like, obviously, Jordan Seaton is going to be a stalwart left tackle for the next couple of years. You're getting some decent play from guys like Hank and Cash Cleveland on the inside. Yes, you lose a couple of names, but I mean, Peyton Kirkland is kind of just getting developed in that pipeline. Same thing with Zach Owens, two transfers who were young that came in. We didn't think they'd start, but you kind of were hoping they'd be ready to start in 2025. I look at the offensive line, and this is one of those things where, hey, Coach Prime would know better than us because he sees these guys in practice. He probably has a good feel for Peyton Kirkland or Zach Owens. Are they going to be ready to go in 2025? If the answer is yes, you might see Colorado not get all that aggressive in the offensive line position because they don't need to. If they're not ready to go, and Coach Prime's seen that in practice, you'll probably see Colorado go at some offensive linemen. Look, I'm not making the argument that Colorado shouldn't continue to address the offensive line because, again, you can never have enough good and quality depth on the offensive line. But I look at it and say it's not a glaring concern like it was 12 months ago coming out of the 2023 year. the defensive line is probably where you want to address. You're losing some really, really good football players, guys like Chidozie on the inside. Jaheim Otis, he's got to be on the top of the list. I mean, 6'5", 320, a guy that has flashed brilliantly at Alabama, kind of struggled to mesh with the new coaching staff, which is not all that rare. I think this kid might just need to change the scenery. You've seen him play good football. I mean, the consistency maybe you want to see a little bit more of, but another one of those guys, kind of like we talked about with Malachi Coleman, go bet on him. 6'5", 320, explosive athlete for the size, came in really, really big, almost 400 pounds at Alabama, shed a lot of weight, added some athleticism. This kid has every opportunity to be an absolute game wrecker, but I also think he gives you that proven quantity too. He's not just the guy you're betting on. Malachi Coleman, he's kind of an unknown. You haven't seen him play great football yet. You're kind of just betting on the traits. Jaheim Otis, you're betting on the traits because there's a lot more. He's just kind of scratching the surface of what he could be as a football player, but he has been a solid Power 4 defensive lineman at Alabama in the SEC. So it's kind of best of both worlds where you're getting a player that you kind of know you can count on, but also a guy that could end up being just an all Big 12 kind of guy in 2025. Another name I would look at, and this is just a fascinating one, not in the transfer portal yet, but Chidozie kind of 2.0 here coming from Houston, Carlos Allen, 6'1", 295, fire hydrant, elite against the run, similar to Chidozie, probably not going to be this, 10 sacks, 15 TFL a season kind of guy like Jaheim Otis could be, but he's going to be damn good for you. And you look at Chidozie might have over the Colorado fans who've been rocking with the boys for 12 months. When Chidozie committed, I was fired up about him. I thought he was exactly what Colorado needed, but I said, I don't know if he'll be a game wrecker. Chidozie's probably been better than I expected. Carlos Allen, 6'1", 295, similar kind of body type to Chidozie, similar kind of play style coming from Houston. I kind of like this one. And then the last position group I just want to address, and we'll get into some more position groups as the transfer portal cycle goes on. That tight end position, Savell Small is kind of making that transition. He's been solid, but you can tell he's still learning the position. You don't really have a difference maker at tight end. Colorado has gone to a lot of those 4 wide receiver sets because they have so much talent in the wide receiver room. And I don't think they have a difference maker in the tight end room. I wouldn't mind seeing Colorado get a guy that's a difference maker. Zach Atkins from Northwest Missouri State. I haven't seen a ton of him, but I've heard he's gotten a lot of buzz. Now I'm going to go kind of circle back and watch a little bit of him. He was a former wide receiver out of high school. He was about 6'3", 200 pounds. He comes to Northwest Missouri, puts on some weight, makes that transition to that tight end spot. But what I love most about him, he's going to give you some pass catching juice. Like at the end of the day, Savell Smalls is not giving you that difference maker as a pass catcher from the tight end spot. I think Colorado could really benefit from that, especially in the red zone. Zach Atkins from Northwest Missouri. We'll talk about him a little bit more over the next couple of days because I'll be the first one to admit I don't watch a ton of Northwest Missouri football. I'm going to circle back on him because he's getting a lot of buzz as a name in the transfer portal. We'll close it out there. Again, Colorado fans, position groups you would like to see Colorado address, and we'll start getting some names together for y'all. Again, appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Buckle up. Going to be a busy one. Appreciate you guys. We'll talk to y'all later. Peace.